So I'm Jason Herkamp with the Herkamp Home Group and living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today we're going to walk through some neighborhoods, kind of in different areas of the Twin Cities, and we're going to rank them from good, better, and best. Now, this is very subjective. Don't get me wrong. Ultimately, these are opinions of mine. However, you have to look at it from a multiple, kind of different angles here too, right? It all depends on what you're looking for, right? It all depends on how much money you're looking to spend. It all depends on, what kind of maybe nightlife and food and things that you're looking for. But we'll go through them, we'll talk about them, and we'll look forward to your comments down below. So first off, we're going to talk about the North Loop, right? So the North Loop is in pretty much the warehouse district in Minneapolis, and pretty trendy area. There's a lot of really good nightlife. If you're looking for like a single family house, not probably the best place to find a single family house. I don't know if there's actually many at all. But if you're looking for like nightlife and, a real nice urban setting and lots of restaurants, it would be a really good place to be. So we're going to put that into at least the better category, in my opinion. So second is going to be Northeast. Now, if you're looking for a single family house, and you're looking for an urban setting and you still want some really good restaurants, microbreweries, things of that nature, that would be a pretty fun place to be, especially if you wanted to live in the city. I particularly don't want to live in the city, so I would still put that one in the better. And the other reason I don't want to live in the city is a lot of my family lives in the suburbs, so it's just not the right place for me at this time in my life. So next would be Uptown. So Uptown is kind of around the lakes in Minneapolis, specifically really Lake of the Isles, Lake Calhoun. There's lots to do as far as restaurants. There's quite a few bars, very walkable, very accessible. It's really, really a great area. So again, in urban setting, to me, I'm going to put Uptown in the good category. The final one that we're going to look at in Minneapolis is going to be Linden Hills. Now, Linden Hills has a lot of single family. There are some restaurants and bars, maybe not as many as you're going to find in the other three places that we mentioned. It's going to be maybe a little calmer, a quieter area than some of the other ones that we mentioned before. Can have less traffic, especially if it's a real busy weekend, in Northeast, or if it's a real busy weekend in the warehouse district or Uptown. There can be lots of people, lots of traffic. And if you're not into that, then Linden Hills would probably be a better place to be. Still has some nice lakes. You got Lake Harriet that's down in the area, and a great, nice area. For me, I would put that in the best category. So now we're going to move on to St. Paul. So in St. Paul, we're going to first start off with Cathedral Hill, right? So Cathedral Hill is where all of the Victorian mansions are. You have the James J. Hill House, which at its time was the biggest residence in all of Minnesota. On top of that, there's numerous other barons of industry, if you will, that built all of their mansions along, for the most part, Summit Ave. There's, a few other streets where you have these huge historic houses, but the most historic avenue with all of these historic homes is really Summit Avenue. You're going to have some restaurants up there. One of my favorite is Moscow on the Hill. It's a great place to go and eat. I really think it's authentic Russian cuisine. It's great. So, but a lot of these homes are extremely historic, and many of them are very, very well preserved, which is really cool because it's a fun place just to drive down. One cool fact is you can do, they have ghost tours. So my family and I with our kids, we went on the ghost tours, and you hear about, the potential mansions that are haunted, and you kind of walk outside of them. So really cool kind of thing to do around maybe like Halloween. My personal opinion of Summit and Cathedral Hill would be, in my opinion, be the best, because I love history. I really love the historical mansions, so I'm going to put that in the best category. So next would be Mac-Groveland or Groveland, which is to the west of Summit Hill. The price points there not quite as expensive as you will find for the most part on Summit Hill. You're going to have a lot more restaurants. You're going to have Macalester College. You're also going to have the University of St. Thomas, which is cool because they just got they're in now Division I basketball and Division I hockey. So that's really interesting fact about St. Thomas anyway. The homes there are going to be a little bit closer together for the most part than you're going to find with the big old gilded Victorian mansions on Cathedral Hill, but still really a great area. So I'm actually going to put Mac-Groveland up in our best two. And it just really depends on the price point of a home that you're looking for. If you're willing to spend over $1 million, well, then you want to be Cathedral Hill. If you want to have an awesome house and be in that $500,000 to $750,000, well, then you want to go to Mac-Groveland, in my opinion. Next, we're going to talk about Highland Park. It's going to be a little bit more affordable than Cathedral Hill and Mac-Groveland area. It's still going to have a bunch of restaurants, some bars, really nice setting, still in St. Paul. In my opinion, I'm going to put that into the better category. So we're going to put that over here into the better category. So then we're going to talk about maybe some of these suburbs, right? We're going to go from second ring suburbs to kind of third tier suburbs, and I kind of look around it as these tiers are like a cake. If the center of Minneapolis and St. Paul is an upside down, wedding cake, then the outside suburbs on the first ring are going to be like, for instance, your Edina or your St. Louis Park, which we're going to get into right now. So Edina is the very first one, specifically like the 50th and France area. And Edina is a very well established, it probably really outside of St. Louis Park is almost like one of the first suburbs. So Edina is super cool, right? It's very easily accessible. There's Fortune 500 companies that have operations there, from Microsoft, and there's a few others that are there, and many more throughout the years. The thing with Edina, it had the very first enclosed mall actually in the United States, and that's Southdale Mall. It was the very first mall that was totally enclosed where you could walk from store to store, and we need that sometimes in the Minnesota winters. So really cool historic fact about Edina. It's very centrally located too, which is awesome. So being that it's so centrally located, it has some excellent restaurants. You can have from very nice, actually high-end steak places, all the way down to your typical fast food. There's not a lot of fast food as far as like right on the main 50th and France is where it's probably the most popular part of Edina, but on 50th and France you have a lot of boutique shopping. You're going to have Muddy Cow, which is an awesome burger place. There's all sorts of like really cool stores right there on that 50th and France. In Edina, you're going to have single family homes that are going to really probably go from the low end is going to be, right at really something that's livable is probably that 400 to the sky's the limit. You can go up into the multiple millions of dollars, right? So there's a wide array of single family homes there. It's one of the most popular suburbs, if you will, in the Twin Cities. I am going to firmly put Edina up into the best category. Edina's neighbor is St. Louis Park. St. Louis Park is really, really nice, but not quite as expensive as Edina. Again, very centrally located, right along Highway 100, and a really, really nice community with lots of shopping, lots of food, restaurants. The cool thing about St. Louis Park, though, is you can ratchet those prices down by quite a bit, right? Not that you can't get a home that's $1 million in St. Louis Park, but they're not nearly as prevalent as they are, like, say, in Edina. What you're going to find in St. Louis Park is homes that you probably can actually get something that's really nice and livable down to about that $350,000, and they're going to then go up really up to $1 million. You know, don't find a ton of homes in St. Louis Park over $1 million, not nearly like what you'd find in Edina. So I'm going to put St. Louis Park firmly in the better category. Next, we're going to talk about Richfield, and Richfield still is one of those inner tier suburbs, those first ring suburbs of, that upside down wedding cake, where the center is Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then you have the Edina, St. Louis Park, and then Richfield. I actually own some properties in Richfield that are rental properties, and it's a great community. A lot of things going on there, a lot of really good restaurants, some that have been in diners, drive-ins, and dives. You can research them. I know there's at least 2 or 3 that have been on there. And the cool thing is it's really conveniently located towards the airport. You can be to the airport super fast. With all of these, actually, you can be to the airport, fairly fast. Richfield, though, it is very, very, very centrally located. The cool thing is the pricing though on especially like any homes are significantly less probably than anything that we've talked about right now. In Richfield, you're going to be able to find single family homes down actually probably, the mid to high 2s is kind of where you're going to be. The bottom is, you probably really could be at that 250. And it would be unusual to have a house in Richfield that was more than probably $700,000. Sometimes on the west side of Richfield, you can get some more expensive homes because the west side of Richfield touches Edina. Again, though, lots of, kind of cool little neighborhood bars, lots of good restaurants that, have some very unique flavors, culturally different restaurants, which is cool because I love food from around the world. So I am going to put Richfield into the better category, especially with its affordability and so forth. So from there, we're going to talk about one of like the third ring. Again, that upside down, wedding cake where we have Minneapolis, St. Paul right in the middle. Second ring is going to be most of the ones that we've talked about, like the Edina, the Richfield, the St. Louis Park. And then the third ring that we're going to talk about, we're going to start off with Maple Grove. And Maple Grove is on the northwest side of the Twin Cities. It's going to be the furthest away from the airport. And Maple Grove is also, for the most part, as far as the housing stock, the average age is significantly newer than what you're going to find in any place else that we've previously talked about. Maple Grove, definitely it's got some big companies like Boston Scientific has got a place up there. Super nice area. Some lakes that are very nice and recreational. Much newer though, right? Overall, everything's newer, from the shopping centers, from the homes. Everything's just newer because it's one of those outer ring suburbs, and those are typically developed the last, in any given metropolitan area. Housing can vary, but single family homes, you're really going to be planning on that. Really, that 450 is kind of that entry level. And then they do, you find stuff into the millions. You're not going to find stuff though that's, 5, 6, 7 million like you can in Edina, but you will find stuff that can definitely be $1.5 million to, $2.5 million. Kind of gets to be the upper end of the Maple Grove market. But again, newer community as far as overall than the rest. On the northwest suburbs, a little bit further away from the airport. So it gets to be a little bit more challenging to get to the airport, but not much. I mean, frankly, even on a snow day, which are the worst typically for traffic, you probably can get from Maple Grove to the airport in an hour and a half. It would typically take you probably 35 to 45 minutes, depending on where you are in Maple Grove, but great place. I'm going to put that also firmly up in the best category. Next is, last but not least, a place that's extremely close to my heart. My parents still live there, is Lakeville, Minnesota. So Lakeville, Minnesota is named because there's 3 lakes that are essentially there, which is Lake Marion, which is a lake I grew up on. Then we have Orchard Lake, and then we have Crystal Lake to the far north. Most of Crystal Lake, though, really is in Burnsville, Minnesota. Lakeville is a great growing town. It's south centrally located in the Twin Cities. So, if Maple Grove's up here, Lakeville's down here. Very similar as far as pricing, it's just different locations, right? Lakeville's going to be closer to the airport. It has lakes that are bigger than the lakes that are actually up in Maple Grove, but it's got a lot of the same things, right? So you're going to have lots of shopping, you're going to have all sorts of restaurants, there's quite a few microbreweries. Downtown Lakeville has really evolved and changed over the years, because Lakeville for the longest time, I can remember even when I was in high school, there was actually no big box stores, believe it or not. There was, there wasn't a Walmart, there wasn't, the town really did not want the big box stores to come in, and eventually they had them come in, right? From Best Buy was there, they're not anymore, but you ended up having some of the bigger grocery chains come in there, including Walmart, including Cub, which is a super value company. So it's really kind of grown up and evolved. Lakeville, geographically, being in the South Metro, ultimately could potentially be the largest city by population in the next 75 years in the entire state of Minnesota. And that's because they have so much land that could be annexed actually into the town of Lakeville. So very well run. They have, an airport, not a big airport, but an airport that you can fly private jets in and out of if you wanted to. They also have an incredible kind of a commercial part of Lakeville, which is called Air Lake. And that's in part because the airport is there, but Air Lake is a very diverse kind of manufacturing, warehousing, area in Lakeville. And what that does is it helps to keep the taxes actually pretty low, the property taxes in Lakeville. So tons of walking trails, some really, really big parks, the biggest of which is Ritter Farm Park, which is located on the northwestern edge of Lake Marion. It's fun because that park was at one time some sort of a farm, and there's still apple trees and cherry trees in there, and so it's super, super cool. Great walking paths, great walking trails, tons of recreation from the lakes to all the parks that Lakeville has. And again, my parents still live there and love it, and they've lived there for the last 52 years. So can't say enough good things about Lakeville. I have to put that into the best category. So again, Jason Herkamp with Living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Love taking you guys through the good, better, best, and we will see you at the next house.